Hey gang, Ronan here. As you can see in this game, we have Celdrahil playing the, well, we'll call it a Dutch Special Premium Tier 10 destroyer, which is how the ship is described in the World of Warships wiki. I just call it fun. And as a big fan of this ship, I was really excited to see this replay. And it doesn't disappoint. Is it flashy? Well, not necessarily. But Celdrahil plays a fantastic game here. And, I wanted to first, I guess, say, great job. It is so fun to see this ship played well. It has an amazing suite of offensive capabilities. It has HE shells. The AP shells, you're not going to probably get too many opportunities to use those to good effect. But the HE shells, in combination with 12-kilometer range, reasonably hard-hitting torpedoes and airstrikes, can be just phenomenal in terms of damage output if played well. And in this game, I think we really see that. So what can I tell you about these guns? Well, these are 150s. You've got 6 of them, 3 turrets, 2 barrels per turret. You can see you've got a couple up front and then one here on the rear of the ship. And it is often the case that I'll push up in the ship with the 5.9 detection radius, the 5.9 kilometer detection radius that you can accomplish with this ship, and find myself squaring off with other DDs. But having 4 barrels up front makes that possible. You don't have smoke, so you're not going to be able to hide that way. And you can see Celdrahil he's slowing down behind this island because nobody wants to get out in front of Seattle and then have that happen and be out in open water. So he's backing up behind the island. Miscalculated that first airstrike drop, but that's easy to do. If Celdrahil is anything like me, he was probably facing a moment of near panic as he realized, if I don't slow down and back up a little bit here, I'm going to get blapped by a radar cruiser. He did a great job. Not only that, but he managed to recover in time to keep himself in the cap. As the radar goes down, now he's in a position to be able to move around a little bit more if he wants. So I was telling you about the guns. They're 150s. Got a reload time base of 5.2 seconds, which you can see here is 4.6 as Celdrahil has the ship configured. The max firing range is 13.26 kilometers, and in my obviously limited experience, and it's just one person, so this is an anecdotal assessment, that's plenty. See, he's making good use of the airstrike there, and we'll get to that in just a minute. The airstrikes, they can do significant damage. So you've got almost 5,000 damage there and a fire. That's number one, fire number one. You're going to see a lot of those in this game. So having secured the cap with the help of the Kremlin, how about that? A Kremlin that moved up to help secure the cap. Our hero is now able to push forward, but he's got to keep in mind that the Seattle's out there. You can see the last position marker for the Seattle at Delta 2. If the Seattle continued on that heading, he's liable to be coming around the mountain. Celdrahil is looking for an opportunity to drop Prusen, but if he does right now, just because the fact that Prusen is a very, very edge of his range, chances are not great. Now let's get it better in a second. You can see that it takes 11.49 seconds. And Seattle's pushed back up, almost catching our hero. And then there are 2 more fires on the Prusen as Celdrahil drops torpedoes behind him. Seattle. and wisely, in my opinion, turned around because obviously there was a sub there. You saw the sub indicator, I'm sure, on the surface of the water, and turning to get the second set of torpedoes away as the radar pops from the Seattle. This is a bad spot to be radared. You got Prusen out there who can shoot at you, and you've got Seattle right in front of you. And take a look at what's behind the Seattle. Right, that's the Constellation, which also has radar. So we're going to keep that in mind for later in the game. So we are 5 minutes and 14 seconds into the game, and Celdrahil's picked up 49,400 damage. And we can add to that total a little bit more with a couple more fires and another set of torpedoes. And this is exactly what I was talking about in terms of the potential for damage output over time, because you can start fires with your airstrikes and your HE shells, and you can follow that up with floods or vice versa. Now, Celdrahil is doing a little bit of window looking here, but that's understandable given the fact that he was trying very hard to do what damage he could to the Seattle without getting detected by the sub that's out here or getting blapped by virtue of the Seattle's radar. Now, the last time we saw the Constellation, it was moving away and more toward the center of the map. Now, I can assure you that's changing, and you can also see the Nevsky is coming this way. Now, right now, the red team, well, they're looking like they're in pretty good shape. The green team is down 3 ships as we get the fire number 6 from Celdrahil. Good guys are down to Schlieffen, Takahashi, and a Salmon, and the red team is down only Colbert, although their Schlieffen is about to get sunk. I mean, what has he got left there? Just a handful of HP. And that's it for him. And now the friendly Dyson takes out the Illinois, and, you know, in a matter of just a few seconds.
Probleem opgelost, kapitein.
This game is looking a little bit different. Good guys have lead, 436 points to 392. And Celdrahil is looking to go to work with his guns. I'm sure hoping to land a few in the airstrike here. He does reset the cap. You can see the Constellation is now at the north end of the cap, so he's going to have to contend with that as well. But he's got Goliath here helping him. He's got Kremlin here, potentially Montana, and it's Kremlin that gets the kill shot on the Seattle. Now, back to the guns. The HE shells do a maximum damage of 2,150 with an 11% fire chance. The initial HE shell velocity is 900 meters per second. These things are really good guns. And the AP shells do a max of 3,000 damage with the same 900 meters per second velocity. But they lack penetration value, so you've got to be really close, and you have to hope that the armor that you're shooting into is not very heavy, or you're probably not going to be doing a whole lot of damage. So that takes care of the guns. We've talked about those now. So the torpedoes, well, what can I tell you about those? I think I mentioned they have a 12-kilometer range. They do a max damage of 15,000 hit points, which is really strong. And with a 70-second reload, they are a legitimate threat from beginning to end, as long as the torpedo tubes don't get knocked out. And if you are careful with your positioning, you can spend a lot of the game, most of the game in some cases, completely unseen. You know, people will know where you are if they're paying any attention at all. As you see the damage total just continue to climb there until now it's stopped at 87,299. And Constellation is continuing to push this way, and you know the game has continued to evolve, let's say. And we find our hero out here by himself. The Montana has continued to fall back, I'm sure under a withering fire from the Nevsky and the potential threat of Shimakaze and Vampire. And there's another torpedo strike. And you see what Celdrahil is doing here, right? He's rotating back and forth. 10 seconds, the torpedoes will be up on the other side. In the meantime, he's got an airstrike that's going to potentially be setting some more fires on the Prusen, and then the torpedoes will follow that up, and we might get a flood. But take a look at the Constellation's position. Now, right now, I imagine he was probably wondering whether or not the Constellation is going to turn this way or turn east. And Constellation is turning this way. Now, Prusen is plainly turning back. Celdrahil, anticipating that, puts the torpedoes not on the line that was indicated, but where he thinks Prusen is going to go, which most of the time is a very smart thing to do. So the torpedoes, we've covered those. Max 15,000 damage, range 12, 70-second reload. Now the airstrikes. Well, the airstrikes, let me just read this from the World of Warships wiki. And I can tell you the Constellation gets closer and closer, and remember I mentioned the radar. Tromp's airstrike is her defining feature and currently unique for a destroyer. At a glance, she uses the same planes and number of bombs as her Tier 10 Dutch cruiser counterpart, Guden Loo. Tromp drops 72 bombs per charge, and each bomb deals up to 3,700 HP of damage. Due to their low penetration of 21 millimeters, the armament largely becomes a tool for starting fires rather than dealing direct damage, as it limits her targets to superstructure destroyers and some thinly armored light cruisers such as Minotaur. It is very true that if you land the airstrike bombs on a heavily armored deck, they will do, well, sometimes nothing. So your only potential damage is going to be with fires. But if you practice with them, you can make them very effective by landing them in superstructure. Now this is a really, really interesting engagement. You can see Celdrahil is headed back toward the edge of the map to do a little more window licking, and he's boxed in by Constellation here. Now Constellation has probably got HE loaded, right? And you can see significant damage, and Constellation is wiggling and trying to avoid the airstrike and torpedoes. And this is a really tight spot. This ship is not going to hold up well to battleship HE at close range. So what is Celdrahil going to be doing about that? Well, you can see he's now turning as the radar drops. He gets the speed boost as one of his bombs does start a fire, and he's trying to come around and get off of the map edge in order to stay out of sight as long as possible. Constellation is moving back and forth in order to make itself less of a target. And right now, those torpedoes couldn't have a worse chance of landing, right? But, boom, there goes a big chunk of Celdrahil's HP. Unfortunately for him, Prusen moved back into the ACAP. And our hero says, you know what, I'm tired of running. Looks like some of these bombs might hit as the tail end of the Constellation rolls out into that box. Yeah, torpedo threat. Constellation can be a
Motorversterking gedeactiveerd.
Now, Constellation is probably going to turn in here. Celdrahil anticipates that, drops the torpedoes perfectly, and isn't really worried about running into the Constellation because the Constellation is going to be sunk. Really, really well played. That was exciting to watch. And if we take a look right now, I mean, we're 6 minutes and 48 seconds remaining, and Celdrahil and the Tromp has picked up 175,934 damage. He's taken out a battleship. He's done a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of HP diminishment on the red team on this flank. And this game is now looking pretty securely in the bag. So getting back to the airstrikes, the range is limited to 10 kilometers rather than the longer ranges of her cruiser counterparts. With airstrike modification in Modification 1 in slot 4, Tromp's airstrike charges in 48 seconds. And while this is fast, it comes at the expense of propulsion modification 1. She stores a maximum of 2 drops at any given time. Her bombs have a faster fall time than those of the cruisers, making them a bit easier to lead. Wily players may even target enemy destroyers with them in a pinch, thanks to the reduced targeting area. Lots of bombs in a small spot. And it can be effective for that. Well, this game is, well, it's winding down, right? I mean, it's right now 5 ships to 3. The green team holds 2 out of 3 of the caps. And with Dyson and Bismarck pushing toward Prusen, you can probably imagine Prusen is going to either be going nose in or running away and kiting. And my guess is probably going to be kiting. and making use of secondaries and lobbing shells over the shoulder.
Motorversterking geactiveerd.
Celdrahil hits the speed boost in an effort to get a little bit more damage and help the team a little bit more, because with 36,000, 37,000 HP, Dyson, well, it's going to be tricky for Dyson to do well against Prusen, but certainly it certainly could happen. Of course, Dyson right now is kind of flat broadside to the Prusen, and that can cause problems. Prusen takes a big smash there, and our hero gets out 2 airstrikes. Prusen not moving very quickly, trying to accelerate now. This is really going to hurt. So roughly 3,700 HP of damage and another fire. If we're counting, that's 11. And Celdrahil says, you know what, let's try this over 12. No. And Dyson finishes him off. And now it really is just a mop-up operation. Our hero should be able to pick up the cap here if there's enough time, if the vampire and I need to get sunk first. So, what do you think? If you've been watching my channel for any length of time, you've seen this ship highlighted in games that I've played with the ship. And it's really nice to see someone else who can make good use of the ship and who plainly enjoys playing it. Is it a ship that you think you could enjoy? The only other ship that I think is kind of like it in terms of destroyers right now is the Halford. I did a couple of videos on that ship not long ago. It does not have airstrikes. It has attack aircraft. And if that's something you're interested in, you might check that out as well. I think the Tromp is more fun to play, and I think it's more effective in terms of its damage output and its ability to help the team. But Halford can help spot, and that can be really important in some matches. If you like a support role, Halford may be for you. Otherwise, if you want to try something like this, I think the Tromp is probably your best bet. And look who's there. Gets off one shot before the game is over, and the damage total is climbing just a little bit more here as we run toward the last few seconds. And we'll take a look at the stats. 186,851 damage, 22 gun hits, 6 torpedoes, 201 bomb hits, 5 aircraft shot down, sank a ship, 11 fires, 3 floods, 5 cap defenses. Came in second to the Johan de Witt, which, good job, Johan de Witt. Also, kudos to the Vampire and Prusen on the other team, both of whom scored over 1,000 points. You can see the damage to the Constellation here, and then the Prusen and Seattle, and a little bit of chip damage on the U-190 at the end. 22 main battery hits, 6 torps. You can see the breakdown of the damage, 63,000 on the torpedoes, 44, almost 45,000 in fires that were set between the bombs and the AG, 329,000 potential damage, and some really nice XP. Celdrahil, great match, and I really appreciate the opportunity to highlight this replay. Those of you joining me, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. If you did, I hope you'll like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.